Welcome to the Channel Surfers. I'm John McCabe, co-host, and I'm joined as always by my good friend and co-host Jeff Lennon. How you doing, Jeff?
Hey, John. I'm doing great, man. It's a great time. Got a great guest, great day, great
We have a
weekend.
really great guest.
Great as
Today's
the
show is going to be like principles, people, and pipeline, partner-led growth with our guest, Will Taylor. Let me just give you a little background on Will, because he's got a really interesting background.
I like
He was
that.
he was head of partnerships at Reveal. Reveal acquired Nearbound, and Will was a part of the Nearbound movement. He was one of the co-authors. And by the way, he put out one of the greatest newsletters ever that when it was taken over by Reveal was ruined, but that was one of the best partner newsletters ever. And thank you, Will. He's also right now co-founder and chief partner officer at Audience Led. And if you aren't following Will on LinkedIn, you're missing out because he's one of the best follows on LinkedIn by far. So welcome to the show, Will Taylor. And how you doing?
Yeah, welcome.
Doing well. Yeah, thank you. And I would be remiss not to mention and thank Jared and Isaac for helping with the media company. They were definitely the co-founders and the face, and I was behind the scenes trying to bring everyone together and create all that great content. And now it's manifested into the agency that I've started. So
awesome.
It's been a very wild ride, but very interesting nonetheless.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know you. Look, I follow that whole Nearbound movement. I know you were involved deeply. I remember seeing all the posts, and I told you, Jeff and I have absorbed that book and that way of thinking, and it's changed our lives. That's why we have this podcast, in essence, because we really felt so compelled about what your messaging was.
Yeah, it was something that I've always been passionate about. I don't really have a background in business. I've just kind of fallen into it. I am obsessed with people and networks and how we all communicate. I wanted to be a therapist, actually. So getting into business and applying the ideas of psychology has been, of course, natural, but I've always found it interesting that there's so much low-hanging fruit for focusing on relationships. And now I'm on a mission to activate those relationships and make them work for business. Yeah, and there's a way where you can do that authentically. So
this is going to tie really well, because I've always believed that to be a good partner manager, you have to have there's got to be at least 30-40% of a therapeutic kind of approach, because you're dealing with conflicts. You're trying to help people get through strategies and understand things, right? So you just describing that, I'm thinking, wow, no wonder you're so successful, because I think it's a big part of how you are a really successful partner channel manager in the first place. So
I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Jeff and I were chatting earlier, and I said, I met you and Jared at the first Partnership Leaders Catalyst when you were standing up talking about, there's like Partner University or Partnership Leaders University.
Yep. Yeah. Ecosystem University, now defunct. Yeah.
Yeah. It's too bad, because you guys, I was like, wow, I just kind of gotten involved there. I'm like, this is awesome. This is like getting a master's in partnerships, and it was pretty interesting. And, we're still involved with them. And, Jeff got involved kind of last year and saw the light, and then went to Catalyst and really saw the light. So, but yeah, I remember meeting you both in person at that first Catalyst.
Yeah. Shout out to Chris Lavoie as well, who has owned Ecosystem University, now changed to a partnership mastermind, and he's running a very successful business. So the education of partnerships is very much so needed, and there's massive opportunity there, which is why podcasts like this exist. And yeah, honestly, that was the first time that I ever spoke on stage. And fun story for anyone who wasn't there, the fire alarm went off. It was like 3 to 5 times or something like that. So my nerves were already racking, and there we go. The fire alarm's going off, interrupting my flow. So I'm glad it left at least a positive impression, and I didn't embarrass myself.
Well, it was the focus, probably. It was the focus to dedicate, right, to get through the message, right, with all that noise and distractions.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, Will, why don't you give our audience a little bit of color around what you're doing, who you are, because you have such a great background, and like I said, your LinkedIn posts are like must watch, must read, and I follow you quite a bit. So, just help the audience understand a little bit more about you, I should say.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, I mean, I started in sales, and that was my first step into business. Like I mentioned, I wanted to be a therapist, couldn't find a job. So, of course, tech sales was extremely accessible. And in doing sales, I sold software to government organizations, which
Mm.
is a pretty hard sell. There's a lot of red tape. And I was also selling to procurement teams.
Mm.
Wow.
Lots of great experiences. However, I was like, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be an easier way. And I always had heard of, relationships impacting, especially, government contracts, although they shouldn't, but they do. That's just how people buy.
Right.
And so I stepped into partnerships in my next role, and I didn't even know what partnerships was. And I was more interested on the enablement side of things. So I started as a partner enablement manager over at Vidyard, which is a sales and marketing video solution. And I immediately saw the impact of partnerships. Our team was one third the size of the sales team, but we were producing one third of the company's total revenue. Marketing was the other third, and sales was sourcing the other third as well. So a
Nice.
smaller team generating the same amount of opportunities and overall revenue. I was like, I got to build my career here. I was featured in an article that then got me my next job where I could start partnerships at a small startup and continued going there, started creating content. And what I noticed is there wasn't a lot of documented plays or tactical content as it pertains to partnerships. It was very much so, the channel world, which has applications and partnerships, but not necessarily for a 50-person tech company. So I figured, well, I'll be the change that I want to see out there in the world. Started creating that content even more. That's how we joined the media company, and we produced all of that media and really kept riding that wave of creating that content. And all the lessons in speaking to all the partnerships people, working with almost all of the partner tech vendors out there, eventually working for a partner tech vendor, I learned that there were some core mistakes that a lot of partner teams were making. And I also came to some interesting conclusions that I'm very happy to share and preach from the rooftops, which is
Please
that
do.
most partnerships should be co-marketing, at least to
Mm.
start.
Hmm.
Eventually, they can grow into co-sell, but I would say it's more likely the case that you'll be successful doing co-marketing than you will be doing co-selling, because co-selling is so involved and there's a lot of nuance of where it works. So after I wasn't part of the acquisition of Reveal being acquired by Crossbeam, I took some time to study, well, why are there so many of my peers getting let go? Why is there so much of a negative view in organizations, or in most organizations, where they just don't understand partnerships? So then they don't fund it and they don't see it as well as they should. And we all know the benefits. We all know the metrics that it can impact. So I took a hard look at what is the customer journey through the bow tie funnel, and I started to identify where different partners can impact different core revenue metrics. And what it led me to believe is that most partnerships should be marketing oriented, which then led me to co-founding the agency Audience Led. So Audience Led is a demand gen marketing agency. So we do all demand gen activities. We just do it with third parties outside of your company. And that's the partners, the influencers, even the customers, all that surround your target buyer. And that's, of course, acting on nearbound. So we're effectively doing nearbound marketing because we're surrounding buyers with existing relationships and existing trust. And we just activate it or deploy it in demand gen functions. And this is going to own our seat at the table as partnerships leaders, because we're doing the thing that the other team is already doing, the marketing team in this case.
Right.
We're just doing it better, quote unquote better, because it's with partners, and we're going to see the lift because of that. So that's
Wow.
a journey on me, and then also why the agency exists, and happy to dig further into the agency as well.
Do you focus on that co-marketing more so than the co-sell? Okay, that's very interesting, because Jeff and I are both, we own companies, and we're struggling with the outbound and the lead gen component. So I think we may have a conversation after this with you, because it's something that's really we're trying to figure out. But one thing I saw, that something a couple of weeks ago on LinkedIn, that partner co-marketing is a better method for companies that are trying to get brand name awareness than it is just straight advertising. because your co-marketing is a bigger effort with someone who's got your back on the marketing efforts, right? So that's really interesting that you're doing that.
Yeah, and a lot of like analysts in the go-to-market space are now talking about ecosystem marketing more
Mm-hmm.
broadly,
Yep.
and that can be community marketing, influencer marketing, and again, this all boils back down to what Nearbound is, because partner marketing, although it's a slice of the ecosystem marketing remit, it's also the larger case that community, influencer, etc., are all going to influence the buyer. And it's interesting you mentioned, the brand investment is definitely looking towards the idea of influencer marketing or ecosystem marketing. And the
Okay.
reason for that is, this is the narrative that we were putting out at the media company, which was ads are more expensive, SEO is harder than ever, and you have more competitors out there because
Yep.
it's easy to vibe code something and get a micro app up and running.
Exactly.
So, what's the function of brand? It's number of eyeballs, but also that's the thing that builds trust. And if you're just trying to spam with AI slop or buy your way in front of people, they're going to feel that and recognize that. And if you can just effectively do all the same stuff you would do anyways to build your brand, but do it with others, well, then you're sharing trust. And that's how the flywheel starts and the snowball really starts to build, because the trust is that quotient or that factor that amplifies everything else that you'll. And it's a differentiator now. If everyone can do the same marketing, have the same messaging, use the same AI to write the same blog post, then what is there to differentiate? Well, it's trust. And the easiest way to do that is through expert relationships.
Wow.
True.
It's interesting. There was a post that somebody had put out last week about differentiation, because what you have right now, you go to an event, right? And everybody's using the same buzzwords to talk about their hyper personalization with AI agents and blah, blah, blah. And it's all just kind of blending together. So to your point, I guess the thing that jumps out at me is, when I start thinking about that, you got to figure out, how do you align with those 5 to 7 adjacent partners that are your customers already talking to, right? There's already a level of trust there. And according to Jay McBain, when we interviewed him earlier in 25, he's saying it's more like 9 to 10 now, because it's just most organizations aren't going and sourcing directly at all. They're leveraging the relationships that they have with their key partners. So that being said, I mean, how would you recommend to somebody who was listening, like, how do you identify those top 5 to 7 adjacent partners? And then where do you start to lean in on that co-marketing? And then when does it become a co-sell? What does that look like?
Yeah, great question. I gave this advice to someone earlier today, and it's the recurring advice I give to anyone who is wanting to learn more about partnerships or to do partnerships, especially at the earlier stage, or if they are a revenue leader at a mid-market to enterprise company that's trying to tap more into it.
Okay.
And that is, first and foremost, if you want to learn where more of your buyers are, ask your buyers where they hang out. It's very straightforward. It's very simple. But if you are able to interview your customers in a structured way, where you're asking them what communities they spend time in, who influences them, who do they follow, what newsletters do they like, what other vendors do they transact with, that's the best place to go, because it's real, tangible feedback from your buyer. And you're likely going to find similar people like them in those spheres of influence.
Wow.
What I see as a common mistake is every partnership is a good idea. You can logic your way through any kind of partnership or relationship, and it'll all make sense on paper. Of course, we want to connect technology A to technology B because we serve similar functions and we can pass this data point. But in actuality, your customers may not be using the solutions in that way or using the relationships that they have in that way. And so you need to ask them directly. From there, if you're especially asking in a structured way, whether it's interviews or through a survey, you're going to have a lot of interesting data that is directly related to the type of buyer that you want to reach. And even if you want to segment to your best customers or your enterprise customers because you want to find more of them, well, do that as well. And then you will be able to identify, here's a profile of this type of partner. Here's the consultant that they work with. Here's the technology that they work with. Here's the community they spend time in, and so on. And you'll start to build this profile that you can then also create a lookalike for, plug it into your data tool. If you're using, a Clay or a Zoom Info, find people like that profile that you just identified with your customer saying, I like this kind of influencer. Great, find 10 more just like them.
Wow.
Still hypothetical, but you're at least going from the bottom up versus I have an idea, let's go test it. You're going to waste a lot of time, especially in partnerships, because it takes a lot to make a partnership work. And so this is also bringing me to why does co-marketing work and why is that a good starting point? Typically, marketing teams are pretty efficient from a content creation standpoint. And so they likely already have a really good engine to create that blog post, to create that social post, run that webinar, whatever it is. If you align your goals with their goals, hey, I'm marketing, I want more leads. Great. Well, I have this partner. They're an expert. They're another distribution endpoint that we can use. You're going to get more leads working with this partner. Great. Invite them on. And then, of course, you can manage the relationship from there. But content is going to be that one-to-many approach where you can validate those relationships. So you might be wrong on the profile, but you can validate it faster with a one-to-many approach, because you probably won't, be able to do that co-sell quite yet because the relationship isn't deep enough, nor is the understanding of the value of the interaction. And so that co-marketing is a really good litmus test. And even if you don't get anything tangible from, a specific opportunity from it, well, now you have this third-party validation on your narratives or on your product marketing, whatever the actual marketing program was. And that's valuable in and of itself, and that has a shelf life.
Wow.
So if we think about ROI, I see that co-marketing is the highest ROI, especially upfront, especially not wasting any time on a relationship. Because if you spend those 6 months otherwise trying to enable co-sell to happen, and then it just doesn't work because the customer doesn't care, then you wasted 6 months. So the translation of testing with co-marketing, getting that shelf life, getting that high ROI, to then saying, great, we did 10 activities with 10 different people. Here are the 3 that performed the best. Maybe we should go deeper with them. That's when you can start to evaluate whether a co-sell motion will actually work or apply, or do you just now have a co-marketing relationship that you can run, every quarter with an activity. So I'm very bullish on co-marketing being the place to start, and that's how I would go about.
Is there a rule of thumb around the co-marketing piece? Because I get it. Yeah. It totally makes sense. You've got to kind of set things up. You got to get the message out there because people don't even understand that they're connecting dots between company A and company B and their solution and delivery execution, right? Is there a rule of thumb that you typically tell people? Because I think I'll just preface this. The biggest challenge right now is expectations, right? Everybody wants it now. Like hey, well, we started this 30 days. Where's the results? What are we doing? What happened? Why isn't something coming from this? So I'm just kind of curious from your perspective, how do you, number one, what is the rule of thumb? And then how do you set the stage, right, John?
Yeah, I like that question. I had a similar question in mind, but I like yours, the way you worded it.
Nice. Yeah. So there's 2 rules of thumb that I always live by. One is make it extremely simple and easy to participate.
Love that.
If things are simple and you have a clear process, then the path to success is going to be clear for everybody involved. If you know who is doing what, when they're doing it by, and then also why they're doing it, including documenting all of that, then that's going to communicate to the internal teams. That's going to communicate to the partner. And it's going to be clear who needs to do what. And your execution is effectively going to be faster because of that, because there's less barriers to entry mentally to understand why are we doing this. So that's number one, is document the process, make it easy to participate. And I have an example that I'll share in a sec. And that's going to drive clarity. The second one is you don't need to go too deep too fast. You don't need a full integration to do a co-marketing activity. You can talk about higher level things like trends or the best practices for the function that both you and your partner are serving. That's still valuable, especially, as times are changing very quickly. You can have, I can think of, 3 off the top of my head. Here's how you use AI in 2026 for go to market if it's sales and marketing technology. Here are the hot topics or the trends that we're seeing in terms of more people investing in ads versus SEO or GEO, or of course you could do a deep dive in a topic. As long as it's relevant, it's still going to be valuable for the audience. And then they're going to say, oh, I trust, what that person said, or, oh, it's interesting that they said this point on solution for go to market at a high level. Let me learn more. So it'll be more top of funnel. But if you do that, that doesn't require such depth, which requires the validation of, is this actually going to be valuable for our business and for the end user? So the tool rules of thumb are: make it extremely easy and simple, document the process, give clarity on who does what, when, and why you're doing it, and then just start higher levels so you don't have to go and then go deep later. But that's going to make the content easier to actually create. I'll give you a very simple example. I'll be brief with it.
That's okay.
What we do for our clients is we find the people, we identify, kind of like how I mentioned, survey your customers, identify the groups that you could work with. What we do is we invite them into a 30-minute recording session. And we say, it's 30 minutes of your time. We're going to produce all of this content. You're going to get all this value. And here's exactly what we're going to talk about. And we even let them choose the topics and whatnot. So they're self-selecting in. And the message of value is 30 minutes of your time, partner, and you get all this other value. Easy to say yes to. It's clear because we talk what the process is. And then what we do with that is we turn that into a blog post, videos, both medium form and short form. And then that manifests as newsletter content, social content, and ads that can be implemented in the demand function. So from 30 minutes of recording, and then call it whatever it is, 2 to 4 to 6 hours of production, we now have assets that are this campaign that we can distribute in a multi-medium fashion. And that is extremely clear, especially, the intricacies that we communicate, and we make it easy to participate. We have a very high yes rate, both to approval of the content because it's their words, but also in participation because they go 30 minutes of my time for all of that. And you're going to do the work, sign me up. Because it's a straightforward process and documented as well.
That sounds amazing. That is like, I think what we've been trying to figure out, Jeff, but for anyone's listening, if you're trying to scale your, awareness and brand, you need to reach out to Will and Audience Led. I think this is an amazing program.
We just got the best soundbite though, John. That was amazing, honestly. Well, and like I said, you not only answered the question, but you gave a practical example, right? And I didn't mean to take away from John, but yeah, I thought that was great. Sure. Sorry.
Cool. No, go ahead. I'm good. So I didn't want to say how that's kind of what we've been looking for and trying to find. And there's so much noise out there about it, even for our podcast. That's something we're looking to do as we get some sponsorship and
extend the reach.
Yeah, extend the reach.
I mean, stuff like this. That little nugget. Like I've told John, as soon as we were talking, I'm like, oh, I remember seeing him on the one partner conference roundtable thing that we did, and I'm like, okay. Yeah. And then I'm like, oh wait, I just watched something worth the recording of you last week. I'm like, all right, I've definitely now I see. Okay, I get it. But coming back to that, you mentioned a couple of things. You mentioned social media, documentation things. What are the KPIs that you would typically recommend that somebody follow when they're doing this co-marketing thing? Because again, for me, it's all about, you got to execute, and execution means you're trying to drive results. You got to be able to point to something and say, hey, we're having success, right, John? I mean, it's because everybody wants to know that we're making progress. So what would you say are like your top 2, 3, 4 KPIs when you're doing the co-marketing to look for?
Yeah, so I would point people to the revenue architecture model that Winning by Design has created. They have a really good way of segmenting, essentially building awareness, doing education, and then of course having your buyer make a selection, which is more of like the sales process. So call it top of funnel, middle of funnel, and then bottom of funnel. Generally, co-marketing will fall in top of funnel or middle of funnel. And the way that you can segment this in your mind is generally you'll be looking at volume metrics, conversion metrics, and time metrics. So the best part about what we're doing is we're not reinventing the wheel. This is plugging into what a marketing team is doing. So they should have a really good way to identify how many clicks are we getting for the top of funnel. Of those clicks, how do they convert? And of course, across what timeline? That's going to then give you the metrics of if we ran a top of funnel activity, what happens.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to make it more complex than those 3 core metrics at that stage. And again, plug it into whatever the marketing team is using for attribution or funnel management. Could be as simple as a HubSpot. Middle of funnel is a bit more conversion oriented. Are we getting leads? Are they actually booking a demo? Are they booking a meeting? So it does spread out across depending on what your goal is, those different kinds of metrics. But still, again, it's volume, conversion, and time. The reason that you'll want to track those things is, of course, whatever marketing is doing today, you want to compare against that. So that's why we're not recreating the wheel. We're not creating any, nuanced attribution. It's just those 3 things based on the program, based on the funnel stage, and then also what marketing is already doing. So a good example.
I'm sorry. Quick question. What if you don't have a marketing team or a lead gen machine? Is that put you behind, or are you not a good enough qualified candidate? Because there are a lot of small startups that their marketing is them, and they don't have HubSpot or anything you're talking about. So what do you do for customers like that?
Yeah, so I would simplify it at that point then, where you're probably getting something like page views, something like meetings booked, and then you're hopefully identifying how many opportunities do we have and which ones are closed won. So the basic funnel would be like, how are we getting people to us? What's happening when they get to us? Yeah. And then how are we moving them forward when they show interest and they're raising their hand, essentially. So I would still take a look at, it could be as simple as put it in a spreadsheet. So a really good example, the easiest to attribute is always going to be a webinar. When people show up at the webinar, how many people registered? That's getting into closer to the middle of funnel. Great, this many people registered. This many people attended. There's one of your conversion steps. This is essentially the interest level of people registered because of our good hook. And then people converted and actually attended because we were able to continue to promote the webinar and move them down the funnel. From those attendees who actually booked a meeting. Maybe we're doing some follow-up to incentivize them or to push them to take that meeting, but you're still going to then track of attendees, who did we follow up with and how did they convert as well, at what percentage, and try and track at least the timeline of the program that you're running. Those things are not necessarily that complex. If you are even just looking at the numbers, keeping a track of here are all the webinar leads, here's the sheet that they're in, here are the stages that we're moving them through, which could again be registered, attended, booked a meeting, now an opportunity. What does that look like? Get the volume of those metrics and then calculate the conversion between the two. And now you are building your funnel. And again, that's what a marketing team will do. And that's what a partner marketing team can do or a channel marketing team can do. It should be no different. And the sophistication of the system could be as simple as a sheet, a Google sheet, or it could be, all the way through to HubSpot and multi-attribution. So if you're like solo founder, I would make sure that you're organizing lead lists, at least in the lists themselves, like segmented to the list, and then using that as a workspace and then running your calculations based on total numbers that you're keeping track of. Requires a little bit of a process change, but it would be good to review that week over week if you're trying to build that pipeline.
Jeff, I think that's the first show where we've been like speechless and listening for that long, because I'm like absorbing this, right? Like
I'm sitting there, I'm like, ooh, that's why when you said one thing, like, ooh, I got a good question. And then when I asked you, just like, you were kind of ripped through. I'm like, this is crazy, man. Because here's kind of my takeaway, right? And I was just, as you were just saying that last piece, because I'm always trying to listen with the intent to understand, not just respond. So it's a big thing for me this year, kind of pushing that. But so far, here's what I've taken away. And again, I think I don't know where we're at, but it's the principles that you bring to the table and developing these repeatable plays, I think is critical, right? And then the second part is it's around the execution and then the KPIs and even the tools, because we didn't even touch on that, because I'm really kind of curious different tools that you see from a co-marketing perspective. But right now I've kind of broken this into those two kind of sections for me, right? About principles and the repeatable plays. And then like I said, the KPIs and the ability to execute and measure that execution. and I'll just throw it out there because there's so much. And you just nailed it in the beginning about the vibe coding. What are some of the tools that you would recommend in helping that process?
So I mapped out a lot of the different go-to-market technologies, and there's so many of them that it's a never-ending project. What I would say is there are a few things that a business needs to understand, or at least document, so that they can clearly map their evaluation of technology to these things, which is, what stage are we at? Are we a startup? We probably should not buy too much tech, because then we can just have tech bloat, and then we can be wasting a lot of time versus actually executing.
Yeah.
If we're in an enterprise space, then we probably need Scalable, because we have hundreds of sellers or what have you. But in general, I would say you should be looking at things that repeat any repeatable task. You're putting that into a system, sending a bunch of emails, LinkedIn DMs, etc. That's why CRM is so popular, is because they have functions that help with that. It's the data collection, it's the organization of it, it's even some automation as well. There's some cheap CRMs out there. We've been using Notion, so like a purpose-built, homegrown built type CRM, but we're exploring tools like Attio,
we just got an account. I'm pretty happy with it. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I'm actually just getting my onboarding for them soon. But from there, it's like the reason Attio exists is because HubSpot is even still too complex, even though it's relatively easy to use.
Yeah.
And so what I would say is the repeatable things should either be put into, there's three ways to deal with it. Put into a process so you become more efficient, put into a technology so that it can do it for you, or delegate it to someone. Now, ideally, you have the first part done, it's documented so that you can clearly give it to someone.
Right.
That's how generally businesses are going to grow. And I was just thinking about this as you were talking. Businesses don't grow only on ideas. They grow and they exit based on process and repeatability. And that's how we're building our agency, because I want to exit this business. And so instead of 3-5 years from now, whenever that happens, instead of documenting everything then and it being chaos, document it now like we're trying to exit the business now. And so with that, the recommendations, it's hard for me to recommend one directly, but generally, like, get your meetings recorded and have some process to summarize those and create action items. And with those action items, put that into some form of project management system to keep you accountable, to keep others accountable, but also to have a log that an AI could look at to then say, hey, you're spending a lot of time on this specific thing. Tell it to research a technology that can help out with that. Oh, you're sending a lot of emails to new people. You're probably cold emailing. Go find a cold email solution. And there are a dime a dozen as well. But anything that you can't process away for yourself, you can't delegate away for yourself, that should be tech. So spend 30 minutes evaluating what you're doing and what you're doing regularly. Note it down and just try and remember, or word vomit it to a meeting recorder, and then AI can figure it out for you. That's what's going to tell you what technology to buy. But in general, anything that's like CRM or workflow oriented, and you don't have to build your own agentic AI workflows or anything like that. It's going to be probably a waste of time. But anything that's workflow oriented is going to be your biggest saver in general. And that's why a lot of actually tools are moving in that direction. I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of different tools are now having a workflow builder in their tool itself, because people don't want to click the buttons. And if it can be automated, then it can be. So that's why I default to workflow as a...
All I have to say is Hot Damn's turned into an AI show, which is a passion for us. And you're like, my mind is like, but that was amazing. You're like, we're kind of on that
cusp.
That
We're on the
right
cusp.
now.
Yeah,
Will.
absolutely.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Well, and it's practical, Will. I mean, look, it's one of the premises that when John said, after looking at Nearbound, and the more we talked about it, it's like, hey, let's go share. I mean, obviously, let's share our experiences. I always tell people after reading that book, and I told John, I'm like, thanks for ruining my life, because I just realized I've been doing Nearbound strategy for like 17, 18 years, just never knew it. I just never realized that was the methodology that I was applying, because I was always about trying to connect dots, bring things together that at the time people weren't looking at, right? And bringing in those different partner structures. And that's how you would build the trust, because you got to get to C, I got to get B involved to make it happen, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But no, this is like John said, it's, and some of the questions I'm asking are, practical for us and how we're trying to go build out not only ourselves, but also kind of educate people. Because the other thing I'm looking for is, we know what our capabilities are and where our sweet spot is. So we start talking with people and figuring out where they are, it's like, well, you know what? You need to go talk to somebody like Will. He can help you with that. Like, his company can help you because they do this. We don't, but we know how to execute on that. But you need somebody to help you get these things going, because that's where I think it's important. So,
and really, Will, the whole basis of this podcast is to help people that, like us, that were in the field, that have these questions and don't have the answers. And this is a very, very topical masterclass for someone who's in our positions trying to grow their business through co-marketing, partner-led strategy, and things that you're doing.
Yeah, honestly, so I again, going back to why do I do this? I studied psychology. As much as I like making money and businesses money, ultimately what I care about is, better communication and better relationships. Because if I can learn those things in the playground of business, then I can bring that back to my, romantic relationship, my friendships, my family relationships. And if I can, be intentional and make things happen, whatever it is, then that's going to allow me to live a rich life. And so the lessons here that I would summarize is like, if you are intentional and direct and communicate clearly through, be it, short sentences or even just process documentation, then that is going to allow people to participate in your idea in a much easier way, because they don't have to do as much thinking, because the message is clear and you've communicated clearly. And the same applies to sales as it does to marketing, as it does to partnerships, because if everyone is busy, we're all in meetings back to back all day, every day, and we are flying by the seat of our pants and we're like trying to make AI work, you are a differentiator if you show up to a meeting and you have an agenda, you set next steps, you talk about why you're doing things, and then you follow up on those. And ultimately, this gets us a lot closer to like, what are the fundamentals of trust? Trust is integrity, authenticity, and doing what you say you will do, as well as showing that you have done it before. Right. The Speed of Trust is a really good book that I've been like more and more obsessed with, because they build the foundations of trust and they explain them pretty well. And if we can implement that into, let's say, a process in business, which is what my mission is to do, then you're going to move the needle, because people will trust you. So you'll get over that barrier. They will then know what they need to do, and it will be easy for them to do it because they'll know why they're doing it.
Yep.
And there won't be jargon around what you are either. So they will not be confused of what the path forward is for you together. And the best part about this is, if, let's say, it's a partnerships person and they have a number that they need to hit, this doesn't ignore any of that, because if you are organized and you're creating your work back plan from the number that you're trying to hit, all of this falls into place. It's just the essential, mini building blocks that you'll use every single day to make things happen. And so my clarion call to people who listen to this is, the more clearly you communicate, the better you will achieve your goals, and the better you will be able to help others achieve their goals. And if you believe in the idea of trust and giving first, then you honor the relationship that you have with the partners, the business partners, or even your personal relationships, by making sure it's clear and by taking action and by being intentional and by being direct. And so I'm a huge proponent of like, this is just the ultimate form of intentional relationships.
Yeah.
And that's how you make partnerships work. And we get lost in the complexity of the new technology or AI, this and that. And it's still going to help you. But if you don't have things documented or clear, you won't even know where to go, let alone your partners. So that's my.
And John, before you do the wrap up, I just two things. One, I know, man, I knew where you were going.
No,
I know.
I'm good.
I know where you were going with this, but seriously, first of all, speed of trust. John, I said this over a year ago. Like, that book just changed my whole because it's the science behind trusting. And again, another book that I told John when I read it, I was like, wow, this is great. But when you put those two together, the speed of trust and Nearbound, it's kind of crazy because it really does, to your point, it changes the way that you approach people. It changes the way that you approach relationships in general, because you're really trying to give first, right? You're not trying to take, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I have one last closing question, and I don't need a lot, but I'm just really curious now because you said
going
something.
Too good. Don't worry about it.
If you could only have one accomplishment in 2026, what would it be?
Great question. It would be, although I feel like I'm pretty good at it now, it would definitely be more regularly setting time to be intentional for myself, but also to inspire being intentional for any relationship, again, be it business or personal. And the way that I'm trying to do that is intentional boredom. So I am intentionally setting time, trying to keep it sacred time, where I sit in a room with a notebook and a pen, no phone, no notifications, no screen. And I just let my mind go where it wants to go. Maybe it's, I haven't talked to this friend in a while, or, I really need to do that thing for that,
I like that
task that I need to do by tomorrow. Or, I have this really big to-do project that I need to work on. So let me jot down some ideas. That's how I'm trying to manifest that. So if that
it's a great
is true in 2026, then it's
answer.
a success.
Love it. Well, Will, it has been amazing having you on the show. We're up against time now, but I think you warrant a repeat appearance at some point, because this was like a masterclass for, growing your business through co-marketing, co-partnerships, or partnerships. And the things you said were just, if you're listening to this audience, this is like, take this advice and run with it. It's going to help you, grow your business. But Will, thank you so much. Can you just let our audience know how to get in touch with you if they want to speak with you after this?
Yeah, for sure. So Will Taylor on LinkedIn, or you can send me an email, will@audienceled.com. I'm accessible through both. You can book time with me. I give my time as much as I can, and for free, usually, within reason. And so that's where you can reach me. And I try and provide tactical content on LinkedIn. So even if you're maybe too shy to say hi, you can follow along there.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Reach out to them, people. Don't waste this moment.
So we'll be sure to put it into the when we do the video on YouTube. I'll make sure I put the link to your company and your email and all that as well. So
we'll do it in the pod description too, for sure. Will, thanks again for being a part of this. You're a good friend, and we really enjoyed having you on the show. For anyone who wants to get in touch with us, we have our website, channelsurfers.com. You can contact us there. There's a contact us page. We have a LinkedIn page as well where we promote the show. And an email, it's john@channelsurfers.com or jeff@channelsurfers.com. So until our next show, Jeff, thanks again for doing this. I think this is our 51st or 50th show coming out. So
somewhere in that neighborhood.
And Will was a big part of that. So you're part of the golden anniversary here, Will.
There we go. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the invite, the conversation, and for everybody listening as well.
Thank you very much, man.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Will, be good. Thanks again.
Take care, everybody.